the villain of this week, which is the Chameleon. Now, the Chameleon, who I thought was a pretty cool character, first showed up in Amazing Spider-Man #1, and he was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. He is mainly a Spidey villain all the time, but he has been branching out in the last few years and joining up in other groups and stuff. He's been his most noteworthy group, which he was part of the Sinister Six at one point in time. But he tends to always fight Spider-Man, and of course, like all villains, at least back in the day, they don't do too well. They tend to lose a lot and don't get ahead. But I always thought he was a unique character because he really, at the beginning, had no power short of his ability to mimic people, put on disguises and stuff. And he became, you find out, a master of disguises. He was a super spy at one point and a brilliant actor. He was born in the USSR, and his name is, and I hope I pronounce it correctly, Dmitry Smerdyakov. He spent his time with Kraven the Hunter, his half-brother. He grew up mainly with him, did things with them. And then there's not much background on what they do, at least that I have read. But in his early youth, he worked with Kraven and did stuff for Kraven, kind of a servant. You know, Kraven, I don't think, really respected him much. But he learned to work on his craft. He found he enjoyed impersonating people. He used to entertain Kraven and the rest of the guys, I guess, when they show up, by doing impersonations of people, famous people or friends they knew. He perfected the ability to make masks and wear them and act like them. And so that went on for a while, to where he finally got bored with all that, decided he could do something better. So he ended up going to America and used his craft to make a few bucks here and there, I'm sure. But then he saw Spider-Man burst onto the scene and got this brilliant idea. Hey, I'm going to impersonate him and, start robbing some banks and stuff, which he does, make Spider-Man a villain, part of the legend of Spider-Man. And he failed. Spider-Man goes after him, finds him, kicks his butt, puts him in jail. And so he stays in jail, and Kraven, comes to America looking for him and probably getting ready to do what he wants to do, which is to, originally he fought Spider-Man and moved on to other characters after that. But he ends up getting his half-brother, Dmitry, the Chameleon, to join him. And so in Amazing Spider-Man, I believe it was 15, they go after Spider-Man, cause a lot of ruckus. Spider-Man beats him up. This time, instead of going in jail after they get convicted, they get deported. They get kicked out back to Europe and where they came from. And so, he would then later on reappear because, you just can't keep a good villain down. Using the same stuff he does there, putting masks on and, doing things, looking like people. He would show up in some of the other Marvel books and not fight Spider-Man in the early days. He, in fact, went into Tales to Astonish, fought the Hulk, Tales of Suspense, and fought, I believe it was Captain America. And later on, he would then show up again in The Incredible Hulk. But during the early days, he really didn't do much after those guys. He really didn't show up too often. He would later show up like in Daredevil 132, I believe. He portrayed the Torpedo, who was a hero then, before he was killed. But he really just kind of didn't show up a lot until, I would say, when Todd McFarlane took over Amazing Spider-Man. And he reintroduced him into that and did a really good job because, you had Todd McFarlane, who's a great artist. And he looked great. And then during that run of the 600s, he actually would show up quite a bit to bother Spider-Man. And I believe he showed up in other things before that, but I really don't have time to go through every appearance. But you find out that Chameleon does not really work to be like wealthy or to conquer the world. I think he just had it in for Spider-Man, and he really doesn't go for anything for personal gain. So he's not like the super wealthy guy, at least not that I could see. But he prefers to do that. And during the time that he goes through, he starts to evolve his craft more. He eventually creates like a belt buckle that he could use, that he would press, and it would allow him to change his face. Kind of like the Question, from DC, who had a belt that you would press it and his face would disappear. He put a mask on and no one could see his face. Well, here he had could change his face really easily and change mask, and it would eventually change his his clothes, so he could look like someone else. So if he needed to escape or get in somewhere or do whatever he needed to do, and I thought that was kind of a nice tick up for him, make it a lot easier than what you see in the main pictures where he's pulling stuff on and off. That could take a while. You could tend to get caught a lot when you're fighting people. But later on, he would eventually get himself set up to where, well, Kraven dies, in that great Spider-Man epic where Kraven and Spider-Man duke it out, and Kraven dies, and Dimitri takes that really personally. He wants vengeance for Kraven. And so what he does, he takes some of Kraven's serums that allow him to be stronger and faster and injects himself with it, and he changes him. And he also takes something else that allows him to now manipulate his face by hand, like Reed Richards could do. If you read any of the early FFs, they showed that he could make his face like clay. Well, he could do the same thing. And so he used that power to try and get back at Spider-Man. And, he was physically enhanced due to the Kraven material to where he's a lot stronger, he's faster, he's more durable, can take the hits better, and supposedly he will age slowly. But still a fascinating villain. I think they should use him a lot more. I think they should use him a little more on a subtle way, not so much in the groups and then he just puts on mask of somebody like a superhero or something. I think his power could be more useful in like infiltration, getting into our government maybe and usurping things, or going into big corporations and taking over. I think that's a better use of his power. But he is a good villain, and I've always appreciated and liked him a lot. And so if you get a chance, during this talk, I was going to be showing you a lot of different covers of books he's been in. He's been in Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man. He's been in a lot of other group books or miniseries, especially in the last 5 years or so. They've really used him a lot. How effective? That'll be up to you to decide. I still think he's still a good character and a good villain, and I would like to see him used a little more smartly. I just think that just being trying to take down Spider-Man face to face isn't the way he should be doing. I would think after all the defeats he's had that he would use his powers, like I say, a little more slyly, where he can set things up better for him to take down Spider-Man or do whatever he wants to do. But he is my villain for this week. And if you get a chance, you may check him out. I have, like I say, some covers. If you go online, you can find villains, or not villains, you can find what books he's been in. And maybe give him a look. You can find a lot of these books in comic stores or online, probably fairly cheap, except for the early 60s and stuff. But, beyond that, I just don't think the books are that expensive, and you can pick up on some pretty interesting stuff to read. So if you get a chance, give the old Chameleon a shot, all right?